Cuong Nhu in the USA today is a vibrant, growing style of martial arts with about 1,400 active members in 19 states. But 20 years ago, in 1971, its future was far from certain. Master Ngo Dong had founded the style in 1965 in Hue, Vietnam, after over 20 years of training and study in Vo Vietnam, Shotokan, Judo, Aikido, and other styles. He saw the need for a new combination of effective hard and soft techniques, along with a strong grounding in his personal philosophy that stressed change and spiritual growth, as well as more traditional aspects of training. Cuong Nhu soon gained a following in Vietnam, becoming the third largest style in the country. But when Master Dong came to the University of Florida to pursue his master's and PhD degrees in entomology, he faced the difficult task of starting the style all over again in a strange land. In typical fashion, Master Dong met the challenge head-on. Communicating his martial arts techniques to his new American students was no problem. But despite an intensive 6-month course in English, communicating with his entomology instructors was a different matter.
When I first came to the United States, there was no really cultural shock at all, because in Vietnam I already saw a lot of movies and listened to the radio, all famous American singers. A lot of them are my idols in singing where I came from, and I was a singer in Vietnam. But the only thing is that when I went to the classroom, and if the professor is some people in the southern accent and make me very hard to understand, and I use a tape recorder, but I still have trouble when my American roommate, they couldn't understand either, and make me feel a little better.
Frank Van Essen was a fellow graduate student at the time and one of Master Dong's first recruits.
Master Dong and I were graduate students at the Department of Entomology, working on our PhDs. And since we were students together and I found out he was teaching a class, I decided to begin. Most people think we started in the basement of the gym, but really we started in the first floor of the graduate student dorm, and we had to move the ping pong tables every night before we had class and then move them back again. And he had a room up in the same dorm, and so often after that we would go up and study entomology afterwards, maybe have a couple beers and study. I was amazed that Sensei was working on a master's degree when he really had not had much English before he got here. And so I recall early on with his instruction, there was not nearly as much verbalization as there is today. It was a lot of demonstration of the technique, and we had to sort of pick it up from there rather than him really breaking it down into the component parts as much as he does now.
This first class of students, which chose the name Dragon Class, also included Mary Davis, Hoang Tung Lap, and John Kay. At the time, there were only a couple of other martial arts clubs on campus, and none of them had the advantage of having a living master on hand. Cuong Nhu became the largest intramural organization at the university within 2 years, attracting several beginning classes of over 200 people. Workouts were held in the basement of the Florida gym or outside on the artificial turf of Florida Field. Some Cuong Nhu pioneers recall those early days.
I enjoyed what we called at that time, or what was known that time as Doug's Rug, otherwise the AstroTurf.
Several of our early classes had about 200 people, and it's like a sea of students almost filled up the whole field. And it was nice that we could run laps as a sort of a warm-up, and we could go up and down the stadium and get good and tired before we did the actual workouts. And we worked very, how can I say it, very often.
We dominated the football field, even though the football players were there at the time, and that's really a hard thing to do.
Middle of July.
In about 2 p.m.
At about 2 p.m. And AstroTurf has this incredible heat capacity. And we got very good at one-legged stances because we figured that the white lines on the field were only at 110 degrees. The green parts of the field were at 140 degrees. So if you stood with one leg, 1 foot on the white lines, your feet didn't scorch nearly as fast.
You can always tell someone who practiced, you know, the real old-timers who practiced on Florida field, because their hopping side kicks are exactly a yard long. So one white line to the other.
I think the toughest part about working out outside after dark, especially the summer months, no doubtly had to be the mosquitoes.
As the ranks of Cuong Nhu steadily increased, traditions were born and began to grow as well. Master Dong drew on an old Vietnamese custom to suggest the inclusion of a dragon in the homecoming parade of 1973. His American students, spirited but woefully inexperienced, set out to build one.
We've been up all night. We'd started God knows how many weeks ahead of time.
Probably a couple months.
Yeah, and painting every weekend. But it got down to the last minute and the damn thing was still not assembled. So here we are all night, the night before the first parade, and we're mostly white belts and a few brown belts.
There were no black belts.
There were no black belts.
There were none. Our class, which started in 1973, was real big, and no one had gis yet. We hadn't even taken our first test yet. So for those people who were able to borrow gis and things, since they went around passing out green belts, so that everybody would have rank and would be impressive to the public. We were all real proud of ourselves, obviously, but we had to give them back.
We finished the assembly at about 7:30 the morning of the parade and moved ahead for the first time from where it was built to the truck that would take it to the assembly field. Of course, that was the first time any of us had picked it up. It was paper mache, it looked beautiful, it was painted. Of course, none of us had really done the calculation that 2x4 and chicken wire and lots of paper mache was going to be extremely heavy. So it took 16 men to pick it up to the truck.
With only a few lapses, the tradition has continued every year since then. But later generations of dragon makers have profited from the experiences of their predecessors, and renovations to the head of the dragon have allowed one person to carry it instead of 16. As the style continued to grow, Master Dong and his students saw the need to develop more resources than the limited funding of a university club could provide. In 1973, the Cuong Nhu Karate Association was founded as a non-profit corporation with a permanent board of directors to ensure continuity and uniformly high standards of instruction. In 1974, Master Dong completed his PhD and began to prepare for his return to Vietnam. He appointed Sensei Lop as chief instructor in the U.S. and chairman of the Black Belt Instruction Committee.
When I just finished my PhD in 1974, and I rushed everything the last 2 or 3 days, but I felt very happy because I left behind 10 black belt, very good spirit, and well educated, and 2 were University of Florida professors, and I'm sure we have good hands to expect to develop the style when I was gone. And beside of that, I left the tape for temporarily have some direction, so that when 1 or 2 years I can come back to have a seminar and then go back and forth maybe once a year to build up the style in the United States.
The videotape which Master Dong refers to covered all aspects of Cuong Nhu, from basic stances to advanced applications with Sensei Lop. As he explained, it was intended to be a reference source for American students in between yearly visits from the master. But in 1975, South Vietnam fell to the communists, and Master Dong was placed under house arrest along with his family. Before long, word was received that he had been executed, and the American Cuong Nhu community went into shock.
When Sensei left, after the month of April 1975, when the communist government took over Vietnam, we heard the news that he was killed. And so what I remember the most at that time was a lot of sadness in the community in Gainesville, the students, friends and family of Cuong Nhu. And we held a memorial service on campus at the University of Florida for Sensei Dong, and it was attended by over 500 people at that time.
Despite their grief at the terrible news, the members of Cuong Nhu did not give up or fall apart. And several months later, sadness turned to joy when it was discovered that the first reports had been wrong, and O Sensei Dong was still alive. Work continued, and late in 1975, the main headquarters of the style was moved off campus to the University Avenue location that was to serve as its home for the next 10 years. The University Club continued as Cypress School, and as students graduated and left town to pursue careers elsewhere, they opened new schools. White Crane School took wing in Miami in 1974, and Phoenix arose in Tallahassee in '75. The first school outside of Florida was started by Tak Foong in Hampton, Virginia in 1976. This early and potentially treacherous period in the development of Cuong Nhu was capped in 1977 when Master Dong managed to escape with his family in a small boat and made his way back to the United States.
After 2 years, 2 months and 20 days under the communist rule, and then I escaped at last with my family, and we came back to the United States like a destiny that when we arrived to the airport in Gainesville, and we had time to go to the University Avenue to watch the Dragon performance performed by our student, Cuong Nhu student. And it's kind of like we celebrate together the return home. And the style matured gradually, and I was glad that everything is all right, and we developed from Florida to out of state, and now we have almost like 20 states that open school.
With the master back once again, Cuong Nhu continued to grow and evolve. Word began to spread within the martial arts community and the community at large. Many local newspaper articles appeared wherever Cuong Nhu schools had sprung up, and a 1980 article in Black Belt magazine, along with an earlier one in Karate Illustrated, contributed to increasing recognition and respect from older, well-established martial arts. By 1981, the 10-year anniversary of the style in the U.S., Cuong Nhu had built a solid foundation for its future development. Traditions continued to evolve, with the annual training camp changing from black belts only at its inception in 1978 to a valuable learning experience for all ranks. New techniques were added at all levels, and old techniques were changed as new, more effective applications were conceived. The Cuong Nhu Manual, a unique and extensive collection of techniques and philosophy, was developed by Master Dong and some of the senior black belts, and was first published in 1982.
When we first started, and Sensei came back in 1971, when Sensei came, he didn't have a manual or a curriculum planned. He knew what he wanted to teach us, and it was, I made efforts to make notes about the curriculum and about the patterns that I saw starting to develop, like with the kick combinations and the hand combinations, and from that we formulated our first manuals that Sensei La spearheaded, and but just from putting together sheets of the various levels, 1 green, 2 green, green belt ranks, that's how we came up with a rough format.
Always receptive to ideas that would make Cuong Nhu practitioners not only better martial artists, but also healthier, more well-rounded human beings, Master Dong discovered the joys of running in 1985. Within 8 months, he was running marathons, and when that became too easy, he took up 100-mile ultra-marathons. For the rest of Cuong Nhu, that translated into an aerobic stamina requirement on the black belt and higher tests that could be satisfied by running, swimming, biking, or a comparable exercise. Another change was the blending of the hard and soft style approaches within Cuong Nhu. Originally, the two philosophies had separate techniques and testing requirements, but Master Dong wanted to consolidate the two wings so that every person in Cuong Nhu could make effective use of both styles in the appropriate situation. In doing so, he was being truer to the original concept of Cuong Nhu, which means hard, soft in Vietnamese, and to the interplay between the two, which is symbolized by the yin-yang patch. To illustrate this combination of styles, Master Dong performs empi, or flying swallow form, utilizing both hard and soft style moves. If one thing is constant within Cuong Nhu, it is change, in the beneficial sense of growth and the avoidance of stagnation. Some of Cuong Nhu's senior instructors, and Master Dong himself, offer varying insights into the course of the changes over the years and the prospects for the future.
In terms of changes, I think the biggest change is just the variety of disciplines that we're drawing from here. Of course, even in the early days, we were aware that we utilized judo and aikido and wing chun and so forth, but we really only had sort of an inkling of that. And then when he came, and he had to go back to Vietnam. When he came back here and took over the association again as a head instructor, it just seemed like it was a vast array of techniques that we had this much, and then all of a sudden it was this way. So that we had some judo, we had some aikido, we had wing chun, we had more weapons. He kept adding on and adding on and adding on, so that now it's so wide that no one can be an expert in all the fields, so we tend to specialize in certain things.
The Cuong Nhu style was very hard, and the soft style was a very small aspect. It was not completely defined. It was actually poorly defined, and you could almost sense Sensei Dong's kind of experimenting with kind of what level of soft style and when to bring it to people's into the curriculum. And you know, I've taken about a 10 or 11 year break here, and now Cuong Nhu is change.
The highest forms that we knew were Shinte. The highest bow form we knew was the first bow form. We didn't use tambos back then. We didn't use nunchaku, kama, or sai, or any of these weapons. We were just a bunch of people in a hot basement working out, getting ready for what Master Dong knew would happen 20, 30 years later, which is Cuong Nhu today.
One change that I certainly enjoy is that our gis, or uniforms, are not as short. When we first had the first set of gis, they seemingly came about 3/4 of the legs. It was quite an embarrassing for me at that time.
As to the differences between now, 1991, after 20 years in the U.S., and 1971, or about the time of 1974, I would say that at that time the requirement for black belt was a lot less than now. Now it seems that a lot of black belts know many more techniques than we did at that time. I think the spirit has grown a lot stronger through interaction with many schools, and when you look back, when we had one school in Gainesville, a school in Miami, a school in Tallahassee, compared with 40 or more schools now we have in the U.S. and overseas, I think Cuong Nhu has really made a great step forward. So I think our future is in great hands because we have a lot of people working together.
When I took my black belt test, you only had to know 12 katas. We didn't do them to the right, we didn't do them ebb. There were just real basic things, and a lot of the students who are taking black belt now are doing requirements that I did for Nidan and Sandan. Things were introduced as we went along, and we had to perform them at whatever level we were when they were introduced. I know I did Tambo 1 for my Nidan, and people are having to do it now for black belt and earlier even. So things have changed a lot. The things that haven't changed are the feelings that everybody develops for each other, the love and caring, the push for perfection, the general spirit development, and wanting to be a big family all over the country. I don't think that's ever going to change.
I strongly believe that with more than 300 black belts in the style, and we have philosophy, we believe in ourselves, and martial art is only the tools to make ourselves to understand who we are, what we are, where we are, so that we can make every effort to enrich our life in many facets, not only mentally, physically, but soulfully, spiritually, and flow together in harmony and grow together.
And so ends the story of the first 20 years of Cuong Nhu in the United States. Master Dong is the founder and the guiding force and remains an inspiration to everyone in the style today. But as he himself has said many times, Cuong Nhu is not just Master Dong. It is everyone from the highest ranking black belts to the newest white belts. The strength of the style lies in helping ordinary people to do extraordinary things. It lies in incorporating the self-confidence, responsibility, respect for others, and non-defeatist attitude learned in class into our dealings with the rest of the world. It lies in serving and improving society as we improve ourselves physically, mentally, and spiritually. In a very real sense that revives and transforms an old cliché, Cuong Nhu is a way of life.